Yeah, I'm ready to go as soon as you are.
All right, perfect. So I just want to say to everybody, hello. We have about 20 attendees have joined us so far. I just want to thank you guys for coming. My name is Michael Smikin from Callagy, your relentless guardian. And I just want to say thank you to two folks for joining us on the webinar today. The first is the one and only Dan Geltrude, America's accountant, who is a best-selling author of Positive Financial Karma. He's also a television personality. He's on Fox News almost every day with his amazing shoes. And on top of that, he is also the founder of Geltrude and Company. In addition, I have Sean Callagy on the line with us, who is the president of Callagy Law, the founder of the Unblinded movement, and has been honored with 2 top 100 national jury verdicts. Thank you both for joining us. So before we jump into it, what was that, Sean?
I said thank you, Michael.
You're very welcome. So Dan, before we jump into the discussion today, what's present for you today? I know that we spoke on Tuesday, but things have changed quite a bit, huh?
A lot of confusion out there. We're relying on the federal government for guidance. And what I mean by we, I mean everyone in the country and the banks. And we're just not getting a clear picture. So the theme has been uncertainty, but of course we are going to provide certainty about uncertainty today. So everyone should feel a little bit better once we're done.
Amazing. Sean, what about you? What's present for you today as we sit here?
You know what's present for me is choice, and choice about how we relate to this entire experience and our business and how we assimilate it into our life. And I think that one of the great misconceptions is that we just feel how we feel. I am present to the reality that we have choice about how we feel. I'm also present to the reality that when we're choosing how we approach feeling, that we should feel our feelings. So I feel anger, I feel sadness, I feel overwhelmed. I compartmentalize, get done with that, and I go back to feeling thankful and grateful for all the amazing things we still have the ability to feel grateful and thankful for, including challenges and possibilities and opportunities for growth. So I am present to choice and also reality. That's what I'm present to, my friend.
Sean, thank you. That was amazing. And I'll just add to that. I had a client yesterday ask me a question. It kind of threw me a little bit because nobody had said this to me yet. You know, his business was shut down. He's not generating revenue. He's scared out of his mind that he's going to be able to not cover expenses and payroll and things of that nature. And he literally said this to me. He goes, Mike, can I ask you a question? Do you feel lucky? Like, I feel really lucky, like with everything that's going on in my life, to have these kinds of challenges. And I kind of thought for a second, and I had an overwhelming, crazy day as well. And I'm like, you know what? I actually do feel lucky. I do. I feel blessed. I feel lucky. And so whatever you just shared, Sean, like that really, really resonated with me. So that was a beautiful message. Thank you.
Thank you.
A lot of businesses out there, a lot of small businesses, a lot of nonprofits are really confused right now, Dan. And I think you said it perfectly, that there's a lot of uncertainty. And so what we have to be able to do is be certain that we're uncertain. But let's try to cut through and get some clarity on some of these things that we're dealing with. Yesterday, the SBA just released, Thursday evening, right, just released this new set of guidance that business owners are supposed to follow to get access to the Paycheck Protection Plan. What has been your experience with business owners and banks alike about whether or not they feel like they have guidance?
I don't think anybody is feeling very comfortable about the guidance, and that's primarily because the guidance has been continually changing. And I'm also going to make a prediction with all of this uncertainty of something I'm certain about. The government is going to change this program even more as we go. So we're going to have to be, all of us, we're going to have to be nimble in this process. All we can do, Michael, is with the facts and the information we have today or tomorrow or the next day, and proceed based on those guidelines. And I know people don't like that because they want definitive, they want exact, particularly when it comes to applying for money that they need so badly. They want to be able to know it's coming, that this is the amount and I'm going to get it, and here's what the program looks like, and ultimately I'm going to be able to have that amount be forgiven. All that is a yes, except for the fact that some of the circumstances may change, and that's going to come from the federal government. So we're all in the same boat.
So let's talk about the biggest circumstance that has changed. I would say 9 out of the 10 calls that I've taken over the last 3 days have been from people who said, hey, Mike, thank you for all the emails. I've already taken care of my PPP application. I already submitted it on Monday. What's been happening with regard to those people who are saying, I'm all good, I've submitted my application?
Here's what's happening. Surprise, surprise, you have not completed your application yet. So what people saw was a sample application that was put out as guidance for what to expect, but that wasn't the final application. And changes have been made since that time. And as we speak right now, we don't have the final application. That is why banks today are not processing applications, because the SBA has not released the final application. So for those who feel that they already applied, well, you had a head start from the standpoint of gathering information and having a general idea of what is going to be required, but you have not filed an application yet. That process is still to come.
Dan, one more time, have people yet filed their application for PPP?
You have not filed your application for PPP, no matter what you have already supplied to anyone. This process is going to be online with your bank directly, not with the SBA. And when you do apply, you will get a confirmation that you have applied. So none of that has happened yet.
Okay.
Mike, can I jump in?
Yeah, please.
Okay, thank you.
Sean.
So Dan, what should we be doing right now? We should have gathered, what I'm hearing, I think, is we should have gathered information and we're just waiting, or where are things right now, like in real time?
So yes, putting information together, and the most important piece of information to put together right now, Sean, is to come up with your average monthly payroll amount for 2019, so I'll be clear about that, for last year. And within that calculation, you have to make sure that no one in that calculation is above 100,000. So if someone makes more than $100,000 a year, you must cap them. You include them, but cap them at $100,000. So that is the biggest piece of information that they're going to be looking for. So that's the piece I would tell you to get a head start on. And then let's see what all the pieces of the puzzle are once the application is finalized by the SBA and distributed to the banks, because that's where you get it from.
Got it. Mike?
Yeah, please. So the other point that I want to make for you, and I think this is what you just ended with, is that this is going to be done by your bank. So, you have some experience with some banks like Wells Fargo. I've spoken with a number of my clients who've been in contact with TD Bank and Chase. What has been your perception about whether or not the banks are ready to do this now, as the SBA described last night?
The banks are not ready to go right now. And the reason for that is they don't know what the final product is supposed to be looking like. If we go back to yesterday, and I was watching the press conference live, the Secretary of the Treasury, Steve Mnuchin, said, tomorrow, meaning Friday, today, we will have this program up and running. You will be able to submit your application to your bank, and you will be able to get money the same day. Now, when he said that, the thought that went through my mind was impossible. It is impossible that could possibly happen. And so far, I'm right. So, to my knowledge, there is no bank that is processing and giving out funds today. Now, full disclosure, I was watching the news and I saw one of the tickers go by that said that the SBA had already processed 700 applications. I can't believe that that's true, or there's some misinformation there as to what type of loans they're processing. But the PPP loan program, to my knowledge, is not yet available.
Yeah, and I think there's another. Go ahead, Sean.
Yeah, when you're ready, Mike. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say that there is another loan that's happening right now, and that's the EIDL, right? The Economic Injury Disaster Loan.
Yes.
Yeah, and so they could be processing those applications and not being clear that this is the PPP, but the banks are not processing these right now.
That's correct. The SBA, by the way, is processing the EIDL loans. They are. But that process is done online directly with the SBA. The PPP program is directly with your bank. So there's a difference there.
And question, if I could ask this, Mike. Going back to the PPP, I've heard a number of different things. And with regard to the payroll piece, is it capped at that payroll? Or I've heard other things about rent and insurance, payroll taxes paid for. Like, any guidance do you have yet on how that fits in, or that's still an unknown?
Sean, are you asking as far as the application process goes in terms of what you qualify in loan, or are you asking what you can spend it on?
I think both. So maybe start with the application and then what you can spend it on.
Okay. So as far as the application process goes, in terms of how much money do I qualify for a loan that could ultimately be forgiven? So it's the average monthly payroll, capped at $100,000 per employee, plus your medical insurance benefits that are provided by the employer, plus retirement plan contributions, plus state unemployment disability taxes paid by the employer. When you add those components up and then you come up with a monthly average, you multiply that by 2.5 times, and that is the pool of money that you're eligible to get.
Dan, could you say that one? I heard you, just for everybody, one more time, because I've heard, I think some people may not understand that. So you
get your pens out.
Yeah, 2.5 times what numbers, Dan?
So it'll be 2.5 times the average monthly numbers of the following. Your payroll capped at $100,000 per employee. Mm-hmm. So that's the most that you can use as that average for the year to come down to your monthly number. Then you can include the retirement plan contributions made by the employer, plus medical benefits paid by the employer, plus state unemployment and disability tax paid by the employer. So when you take those numbers, let's say for the year, divide by 12, you get your average monthly for those categories, multiplied by 2.5 times, and that is what you are eligible to receive.
Awesome.
Okay, so now, whatever that number is, that's what you qualify for. You put in your application, and by the way, this is in theory of how I understand the process. The loan will be processed by the bank. The bank will then submit your application to the SBA for funding. Now, the reason why you're using your local bank is because they're already familiar with you most of the time, and that they could get through the process more quickly. Of course, that's in theory. Then when it goes into the SBA clears it for funding, the money comes into your bank, and then your bank will wire you the funds. Now you have the money. So once you get the money, a clock starts, and that clock is for an 8-week period. So that money you received is designed to be used over 8 weeks. Now, to Sean's question, what can you use it for? You can use it for payroll, and you can use it for rent, utilities, interest on debt. That basically the carrying costs of your business. But this program is primarily designed to keep employees employed. So the real push here is to make sure that you have your employees working and being paid. Now, the question may arise to say, well, I've closed my doors, or I've laid people off. And that may very well be true. Well, here's the catch. You got to bring them back. Because in order for you to qualify for that loan to be forgiven, you must have at least the same amount of employees that you had when your average number was calculated from 2019. So if your average monthly payroll, right, when you calculated that, you had 20 employees, full-time equivalent of 20 employees, in order for you to be able to have that loan fully forgiven in that 8-week period that you receive this money to cover you, you must employ 20 full-time equivalents. They don't have to be the same people, but you have to have 20 full-time equivalents.
Yeah. And Mike, let me just ask one follow-up. I apologize.
Sure.
You, Mike.
Please, no, go ahead.
So Dan, what do you think happens? This is confusing to me.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have to run out of money to use this money? So, you know what I'm saying? So what if you have revenue coming in? Do you have to use that first, then this? Is there any guidance on that? Or you have to like be out of money and then use this money?
No, there's no specific guidance on that, Sean. It seems like when you are going through the application process, you are going to have to sign off, meaning the business owner, on some certifications. And one of those certifications is that you are experiencing negative economic circumstances. That is really a very vast pool of people to be in, because as of today, you may be doing just fine. Nothing may have changed in your business in the application process. But let's say you're in a business whereby you are extending terms to your clients, like a law firm. You provide a service and then you send them an invoice. Well, your lawyers are busy, but wait a minute. Now your clients may not be able to pay or pay timely. So now you have fallen into a negative economic situation. And you may be able to see that coming. And in my opinion, that could qualify you for having an adverse negative economic circumstance. That uncertainty of your economic situation and you certifying to that puts you in that category. So let's just take another example, Sean. Let's say that you're in the business of manufacturing medical masks. Well, if you look at that situation, you could say, well, over the next 8 weeks, it seems pretty clear that there's going to be demand and the ability to pay for your product. So if you're in that situation, you need to be in integrity and not be applying for these loans because you really don't qualify. And we really need to have this pool of money set aside for the people that need it. This is not free money for everyone. So as Americans, let's all do the right thing. I want to emphasize that.
It's a beautiful message. And so we should always act in integrity, but Dan, let's just say hypothetically, somebody did take money and they didn't experience a negative impact from COVID-19. What then happens to them as the government processes these applications?
Can you repeat that again, Michael? So
yeah, sure.
you applied, you received the money.
But you didn't have a negative impact on your business. In fact, revenues are up for whatever reason. What then happens as far as the government's concerned?
Okay, good question. So if when you filed your application, you were under the belief that you were going to have a negative economic situation because of coronavirus, right? Because we're staying in integrity. Now you've received the money and you realize that you really didn't need it and you had no negative economic circumstance. In my opinion, that money would ultimately turn into a loan that you should repay. Because
and do you know what?
Go ahead.
What interest rate does the PPP loan run at? Do you know offhand?
Yes. Again, this changed as of yesterday.
Right.
It was a 0.5%, and now it's at 1% over a 2-year period. So it's a 2-year loan at 1%.
Gotcha. Sean had asked you a question about what is included in payroll, in a payroll cost. Now, some businesses use 1099, independent contractor employees, independent contractors to perform certain services. Should business owners be including their independent contractors in their payroll calculation?
Michael, this is one of those topics that has bounced back and forth, that yes, independent contractors can be included as part of your payroll calculation, and no, they can't. As of now, all the language that I am seeing is independent contractors, also known as 1099 employees, cannot be included in your payroll calculation. If someone is receiving a 1099, they can apply individually under the PPP program and ask for a request a loan, but that is not included as part of the employer's application to get funds.
So Dan, let me ask you this question. And I don't know if the SBA has been clear on this issue, but if you had 20 employees and when COVID-19 hit, you shuttered your business and you let 10 people go, do you have to have 20 people employed at the time you submit your application for this loan, or do you have to have them back by a certain time frame?
So when the 8-week period starts, that this 2.5 times the payroll number comes into play, during that period of time, if you want to be able to have the loan forgiven, you must have the same amount of full-time equivalent employees. So in your example, if you had 20 last year, you're down to 10 now. Now you get the money. If you don't ramp back up to those 20 employees and you only keep 10, then you're using that as part of a formula of 50% of the payroll number has been retained. Therefore, only 50% of the loan is eligible to be forgiven.
Yeah. And there was one other thing that you shared that I think is really important. Do they have to be the same people, or can it be any 20 employees?
It could be any 20 employees, because if you've already laid people off, they may already be searching for other employment and gotten something. They may already be on employment and don't want to come back to work. That's possible. So it does not have to be the same people.
What about
Mike? One thing still.
Yeah, sure.
Probably additional guidance coming. So how do you think, Dan, and I asked this sort of before, but I just want to crystallize it a little bit more. How do you think they're going to review what happened? So let's say that you get $1 million, and let's say that the economic hardship to your business during this 2-month period was you had $300,000 a month less in revenue come in. So it's 600,000 was the actual lower amount. You got $1 million. Then the next month, after the 8 weeks is up, you have a $500,000 reduction. So do you think they're going to get into that type of analysis, Dan, when they look at forgiveness and non-forgiveness? Is there any guidance yet, or that's still to come?
There's no guidance on that yet, Sean. And the reason for that is they really don't know what's going to happen. And the push right now is to try to get money in the hands of these small businesses in order to keep people employed. Now, I will tell you this along the lines of where you're going. There is, without question, going to be fraud in this program. That people are going to take money and do the wrong things, whatever that looks like.
Right.
So in my opinion, after the program runs its course, do I think that the government is going to come out and do some auditing? Yes. Do I think the government is going to put some people in jail? Yes, I do. So, now, are they going to audit everybody? No. But they will be looking at people that are going to try to abuse this program and make examples of them. So I would tell everybody who's out there listening, do not be one of those people. Not worth it.
So Dan, let me ask you this question. For all those business owners, which I think make up a smaller subset that go, I'll just wait a couple of weeks or maybe like a month to figure out whether or not I'm going to apply for this loan, let all this stuff hash out. What's your advice to them? Like, is it wise for them to wait a month or 2 months before they file this application?
I've gotten this question a number of times based upon circumstances. Back to what Sean said, some people are saying, well, I'm not impacted right now. I think I'm going to have an impact a few weeks from now. Well, if you think that you're going to have that adverse economic situation a few weeks from now, apply now and get the process going and get the money and use it for its intended its intended use. Remember, again, the thing that the government wants more than anything else out of this program is for companies to keep people employed. And as long as you're doing that, I think for the most part, the government will be satisfied. So that's part A of the question. Part B of the question that you asked without knowing you asked it is the money going to run out? So $350 billion has been allocated through the stimulus package for this program, for the PPP program, right? So now, essentially, you could have every small business in the United States applying. Well, if that happens, I don't think $350 billion is going to be enough, and they're going to have to go back to Congress to get more money. Do I think they will be able to do that? Yes. Do I think it'll take some time? Probably. So there's no reason to wait. That's the short answer, of which I just spent a lot of time explaining why. Apply sooner rather than later.
Dan, can you, you touched on a bunch with regard to the loan forgiveness. Can you explain the SBA's new rule of 75-25, the payroll cost allocation?
Sure. So besides the amount of the money that you can use for payroll, because remember, this is primarily a save jobs program. But what the government is doing is they're giving you some leeway to spend this money on some other things that are not payroll related. And those things are your rent, your utilities, some debt service, those types of things. Again, carrying costs for your business. So how much of that, the question is, how much of that can you use? They are allowing you up to 25% of the money that you receive can be allocated towards those carrying costs. So you can't turn around and say, well, I'm going to make sure that my rent's paid and all these other things to the detriment of your employees or to try to save money. That doesn't work. Again, these monies need to be used for how they were intended. Payroll first, and then a 25% allocation to other carrying costs.
Now, what if you have some businesses that are going, you know, I got a big line of credit right now, and I would love to take $100,000 that I get from the government and go and pay off, you know, this principal on my line of credit. Is that something that the government is allowing, or how are they viewing that?
No, they're not allowing that. And paying off principal debt is not one of the permitted uses. And depending on the circumstances, that could be considered fraud because of your intent. And at the very least, it's not going to be a forgivable loan. So people may have in their head, well, I'd rather exchange a loan at 1% for a loan that's at a much higher percentage. Well, to me, I don't want to play lawyer here, but that's starting to signal some intent, right? So when you start to get into your intentionally playing games, that's when the F word, fraud, drops in. And again, that puts you in a criminal situation with the federal government. Again, place you don't want to be.
So you have a couple of people here, even attendees here, who have already begun contacting their banks. And one bank in particular says, hey, we don't have a prior relationship with you. And in order for you to qualify for the PPP, you have to have a prior relationship with us, even a loan or a credit card or something along those lines. What would you recommend to those people about what they should be doing today to begin to put themselves in the most optimal position to get an application in when the banks are clear on what they're doing with them?
So what a lot of banks are doing right now, because there is such an anticipated overwhelming response to this program, many banks are going out and saying, listen, we are not taking any new customers related to this program. We will only file the application for you for the PPP program if you are already a customer of our bank. Well, to your point, Mike, you could have a situation where that may not work out so well. So it could really put some people out in the cold. So what I would say is this: they should have a conversation with their accountant to get some guidance as to how this will work. Now, let me just give you some insight as to what we are doing at Geltrude & Company. We have decided that the easiest way to get this done for our clients or for people that are engaging us in this process is to develop have a relationship with a bank, so that any application that goes through us will automatically be considered an existing customer of the bank. Therefore, our firm, can process any application through our banking relationship. I don't know if other accountants are doing that, but that's what we felt was the best way to service our clients. So anybody who goes through us is not going to have that issue related to their existing banking relationship or not having an existing banking relationship.
Dan, can I ask you a question? And I appreciate you offering that. Can we make your contact information available to the attendees and the people who are appearing Facebook Live so they can call, Geltrude & Company to get clarity on this issue? Because I feel that a lot of people are not being steered in the right direction by their accountants. Would that be okay with you?
Sure.
So we have another question.
Mike, before we go to that, unfortunately, I'm going to have to jump in a moment. I have another session. This one's with Tony Robbins and the Lions and Platinum Group. I have an opportunity there to share, and I will absolutely bring this up if it's appropriate. Dan, this is incredible. I'm going to spread this message. And can I make one request of you, Dan, also?
Sure.
Unblinded Huddle, or Unblinded Huddle at unblindedhuddle.com. You've been kind enough to make appearances before. Would you make some additional appearances to continue to give updates about what's happening, along with you, Michael? Would you both do that?
100%.
Absolutely, Sean.
All right, thank you. And listen, I can't recommend Dan. You are the consummate professional. Incredible job. I'm going to take a look with our team of what we're doing at Callagy at Unblinded to make sure that we're working with you, consulting with you, acting with you to make this all go. I am deeply appreciative, Michael, for you doing this. Michael Smike and Dan Geltrude, thanks, guys, and I will talk to you guys in a little bit.
Thank you, Sean. And so we still got a lot of information to share, folks. And by the way, for those people who are on live and the attendees here, if you are an employee of a small business or are a small business employer or know a small business employer, please click the share button. It is absolutely crazy and nuts that you're not sharing this information. And if you're an employee of a small business that potentially could go under, then you should be sharing this with them right now. So I swear to you, there's only going to be 2 more calls to action like that. But please go ahead and share that. So we're also going to be talking a little bit about sole proprietors independent contractors and the self-employed, but I want to continue down this track that in addition to the PPP, there's also the economic injury disaster loan that exists. Can you apply for both the PPP and the EIDL?
Yes, you can. You can apply for both loans. Just so everyone knows, the EIDL program is a pre-existing program. This has been in place for a very long time. Its primary function has always been related to natural disasters, earthquakes, floods, those types of things where people who have small businesses can get help in the form of loans. So that program is still in place. You can apply for that online through the SBA. That has nothing to do with your local bank. That's between you and the SBA directly.
Beautiful, thank you. We also have a hand up. We still have a lot of material to go through, but we have a hand up from Rob Gill. So can we go ahead and give Rob Gill the opportunity to, can we unmute his mic? How does that work?
Rob, you're set to talk.
Hey, what's up, guys?
Hey, Rob.
America's
Hey,
Accountant
Rob.
is live. Hey, Michael.
How's it going, brother?
America's 1A best attorney in the country. How's that?
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that.
So Dan, I just got off the phone. It's interesting. A guy that just reached out to me that I've known for a very long time. He's not a client, and I am going to send him over to you. He has a 41-unit piece of real estate that he has a call with his banker today, and really the call is about, yeah, I understand I could collect rents for the next 90 days and not have to pay, but is there anything to date in the stimulus package for anyone that is into the space of real estate like this when it comes to what that would look like for them?
Unfortunately, Rob, the way the program, the PPP program is set up, it's really driven by payroll. And when you have these real estate companies, a lot of times they're not heavy in terms of payroll costs. And their risk that they run is that they have tenants that are not paying their rent, and therefore put pressure on the landlord to be able to pay their mortgage. So there has been discussion about getting relief to people who are in the real estate business, but I have not seen any legislation related to it. I think that the procedure to take there is for your client to have a discussion directly with their bank, and if they're being adversely impacted by people not being able to pay their rent, is to try to work out a payment arrangement related to their mortgage with the bank. And I think most banks out there, if they're really having trouble, the landlord will work with them to get them past the hump.
Okay, so that's where they're at right now, because even all their tenants, if they don't have a job, they're not going to pay the rent. So, that's going to probably be a 6 month, and I think it's in the greater New York City area. So now you're dealing with 6 months, for guys like that, I would assume. You know what I mean?
Well, Rob, what we see like in New Jersey, the governor said no evictions for the next 90 days. Now, I don't know if he could do that constitutionally. Maybe he can, maybe he can't. But what I do know in practical purposes is, no court is going to hear the case. So
Gotcha.
You're there anyway. Am I wrong on that, Michael?
You're not wrong.
Yeah, and Dan, I just joined text you with someone different than what I just mentioned on this call, so that's not the same person. I just want to give you a heads up. That's a different situation.
Thank you.
Hey, Dan, so and thank you, Rob Gill, I appreciate it. So the ambassador of results joining the call, thank you so much. I appreciate your contribution, sir. Before we jump into some of these additional questions, because they seem to be veering into a slightly different direction, we just talked about small businesses, right? The PPP also applies to nonprofits, right? 501c3 organizations?
Yes, it does.
Okay, and so if someone owns a 501c3, is there anything different about the way they should be approaching the PPP program when they're submitting their application?
It's really the same process because it's going to be calculated based upon payroll and the details that we talked about. And then when they get the money, then there's an 8-week period for which you need to track those expenses. And then after that time, you apply for loan forgiveness. So qualified nonprofit organizations are in the same situation as small businesses.
So you have small businesses, 501c3s, and then you have sole proprietors, independent contractors, and self-employed who are now also falling within the protections of the PPP as well. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So again, the process, once we have it nailed down, but in general terms from what we believe is going to be part of the application process, again, it's consistent. So if you are someone out there who is a sole proprietor, meaning you're unincorporated and you are filing your tax return with your business activity being on what's called Schedule C, you are permitted to use the information on your Schedule C as part of the application process, using yourself as part of the payroll calculation up to $100,000. Again, that's the cap across the board. No one's permitted to apply using a payroll number greater than $100,000. So those people that are self-employed and 1099s, in those categories, the application process is exactly the same, only you're using yourself as probably the primary payroll number.
Yeah, and so there's this now flurry of activity, right, with regard to small businesses. The sole proprietors, independent contractors, and self-employed are going, wait, do I have to file today too? Should I be doing this today? Is there any guidance from the SBA as to when they file their applications?
So for small businesses, the application process was supposed to start today. Doesn't look like that's going to be the case. For the people we were just talking about that fall into self-employment and being sole proprietors, the filing date starts on April 10th. So you're supposed to hold off on filing until that point. So then the question comes up and says, well, why do I have to wait? I'll just apply early. I have to tell you people, I don't know what's going to happen if you do that. You know, when you're talking about the government and you got out of line, whether that pushes you back, whether that voids your application, I don't know. I would tell you, follow the rules as they're laid out. So if you're a sole proprietor, you know, file the application on April 10th when it's being requested. That's really the best bet.
And at some point to that tune, the music's going to stop and there may not be any money left over. So wait till, but don't wait too long after. Is that fair?
That's true. And again, Michael, this is just my opinion. Unfortunately, I think this program is going to have to run for quite some time. I'm not so sure that 8 weeks is going to be enough. And I think that there's going to be another flow of the PPP program rolling out after 8 weeks. And I do believe if we run through the $350 billion before the time is up, I think they'll re-up that. And I think that we'll see another stimulus package thereafter. Just my opinion, because I don't think businesses are going to be able to recover that quickly. At least not all of them.
So we have a question from Diane. And Diane says, hey, look, I have a fairly new business, right? I have some employees that have left their prior positions to come and join me. And now I can't keep them working. I have no income coming in. So, you know, I only have payroll from the beginning of this month. Is that enough time for me to demonstrate my payroll numbers so I can request, you know, a PPP loan?
The question is when you started your business. I believe, off the top of my head, because there's so much here, Michael, you may have to rescue me a little bit. I think that your business had to be in place on February 15th of 2020.
Nailed it. Yes. Yeah.
All right. So if you weren't in business as of February 15th, 2020, I don't believe you qualify. Now, I'm not saying that you shouldn't qualify in terms of what's right or wrong, but it seems to me, based on reading the rules, you wouldn't qualify.
Right. So, but if Diane's business was open on January 1st, that was the first day it was incorporated, they started doing business, revenue was rolling in, they had their employees, can they apply for a PPP loan?
Yes, they can. And let me take this one step forward, because I get this question quite a bit from the business owners. They're saying, look, I can't pay people not one more day. I am out of money right now. I don't want to let them go, but I just don't have the money. I need this stimulus money in order to keep my business going in terms of bringing people back and continuing on. There's no easy answer for this. You may have to let those people go for a period of time until the stimulus money comes in, and then you can rehire them. Of course, you take the risk that they could find something else and not come back, or they go on unemployment and they decide that they don't want to come back, because unemployment benefits are very, very generous right now. So they're going to pay people quite a bit of money to stay home. And by the way, that's what they want. They want people to stay home. That's why the unemployment benefits are so generous. Funny thing the way they've set it up.
So couple of questions that are getting a little nuanced, and so we're gonna try to keep it at like the 50 to 20,000 foot, but a couple of them that are pretty good. So if I have a business that only uses independent contractors, does that still make me a small business? But am I otherwise ineligible to apply for a PPP?
Well, it doesn't make you ineligible, because if you have independent contractors only working for you, then the only payroll related number that you have is for yourself. You're permitted to apply for PPP for your own compensation, of course, capped at $100,000. So all those independent contractors that work for you, they would have to go out and apply the same as you in order to be able to recover their payroll through the PPP program.
Beautiful. Similar question. I have an LLC but no employees. Am I eligible to apply for the PPP loan?
If you're a single member LLC, that means that you would be filing on Schedule C, which is what we talked about being self-employed or a sole proprietor. So yes, you would be eligible to apply for the PPP program, and the payroll amount that you'll be applying for is for yourself, capped at $100,000.
So a bunch of questions are coming in asking you to repeat your guidance related to the number of employees on payroll that you had in 2019 for the loan forgiveness portion of it. So can you just explain that one more time? Because it was a couple of people who had asked that question.
Sure, and I understand that this stuff is not so easy to digest, because there's numbers flying all over the place, and I assume there's not many accountants on the other side here, so I'll be happy to go through that. So here is how the forgivable amount gets calculated in rough terms. So last year in 2019, let's assume that you had 20 employees. And I have to just tell you, the calculation is full-time equivalents. So I'm just going to go out and make this as easy as I can and say you have 20 full-time employees on average for 2019. That 20 is going to be used in the calculation for what portion is forgivable related to the money you've received through PPP in 2020. So if for some reason you only have 10 full-time equivalents during the period of time, which is called the covered period, of the 8 weeks, which starts when you receive the money from the government, you only have 10. Last year, you had 20. So you're only employing 50% of what you had last year. Therefore, the amount of the loan, which is eligible to be forgiven, would be 50%, because you're only retaining 50% of the employees on average that you had from last year. So if you think about it, it makes sense from the government standpoint, because their primary push here is to make sure that companies, small businesses, are employing the same amount of people that they had last year. They don't want you to let people go. Now, of course, you may say, well, my business shrank from last year, have nothing to do with the virus, or we're more efficient. I don't need that many people. I hear what you're saying, but that's not part of what they're considering as an exception to what can be forgivable. They're just giving it straight up. How many employees last year? How many employees in the cover period? You take that percentage, and that's what you apply to the loan as what will be forgiven. And whatever is not forgiven rolls into a loan for 2 years at 1% interest.
Beautiful. And so, Dan, can I ask you a question? This is very confusing. What would people do to contact you, to get in touch with you, to get answers to these questions directly, rather than wait for me to fumble through the buttons and things of that nature? How would they get in touch with you directly?
So the best way to get me is by email. As I'm sure all of you understand, I'm getting inundated with calls and everything else, and that's fine. It just takes me a little while to get through everything. So I would tell you that the best way to reach out to me is through email. I will get back to you. My email address is my first initial, D as in Dan, my last name, Geltrude, Geltrude, at Geltrude, Geltrude.com. dgeltrude@geltrude.com. That's the best way to be able to connect with me, and I will get back to you.
Amazing. So we have one more question that just popped up, and that is when calculating the payroll cost, is your federal income tax withholding and FICA deductions considered a payroll cost?
Those are not payroll costs. So you want to take your, but they're calculated into the gross salary number, right? So it's whatever that salary is. If you're paying somebody $50,000, that's the number. You're not getting credit for your federal, the Social Security piece of that. By the way, that's something separate. We could talk about that later, but just in terms of the calculation, it's what the employer is paying related to salary. So you got $50,000 employee, that's the number, 50,000. And then on top of that, you can calculate what you pay towards their health benefits, what you contribute towards their retirement, and what you pay in terms of the employer portion of state unemployment and disability. Those are the numbers that go into it. Those federal numbers do not apply.
So Dan, as a value add to the attendees and to the people joining us on live, that I want to thank very much for coming on board, besides them pulling this SBA form, which right now the SBA is saying, fill out SBA form 2483, form 2483, the Paycheck Protection Program application form, whether or not that is the application form or not, besides them filling that out or preparing that form, what are 2 or 3 additional things that small business owners, owners or operators of 501c3 nonprofits, sole proprietors, independent contractors, or the self-employed can be doing now to put themselves in the most optimal position to hit the ground running when there's clarity on the application process?
I would say this, the single most important aspect of this entire thing relates to communication. So all of you who are business owners out there, this is a really difficult time. It's probably more difficult than you've ever experienced. And let's hope this is the most difficult period of time that you'll ever face. So you need to have clear communication. What do I mean by that? Your employees right now are nervous. They're nervous. And if you're not communicating with them, here's what they're doing. They're filling in the blanks. And they're filling in those blanks with a lot of anxiety. So it behooves you to let your employees know exactly what's happening and be honest with them. They're already expecting bad news, so you're not going to surprise them with anything. Be very straight. To the extent you can work through the process with them, talk to them about working through it. Talk to them about applying for this program and bringing them back to work at their full-time pay. All those things, very important. Along the lines of communication, if you haven't had open lines of communication with your accountant, who most of the time the accountant is the primary advisor, and or with your banker, well, start getting on that right now. And if you're not getting what you need, obviously, and this isn't about a sales pitch, but I am available to try to assist you. You can reach out to me. In service of Michael, I'm happy to help people out the best I can. But it's really about communicating where you are, what you need to do, and let everybody know what the plan is to the greatest extent you can have a plan. And we can't plan for every contingency here. We don't know how long this thing is going to last. My guess here is that we're in the throes of this thing for at least a month, but the government giving 8 weeks of money, they're already telling us they're anticipating a couple of months, and it could even be longer. So planning is key, but communication, most important factor, Michael.
Beautiful. Dan, final words?
Well, look, for all of you out there that are really going through a difficult time, I'm sorry that we're in this situation, but we're all in this together. So when you think about what's going to happen, and that anxiety creeps in, I think you can take some comfort in looking left and looking right and saying, well, these people next to me, they're in the same boat. So, I don't want to say misery loves company, but there's comfort in everybody trying to get to the same place. And what we're trying to do here is navigate our businesses through a very, very difficult and challenging time. So reach out to the people that you feel you can get good guidance from, take their advice, apply it to your business strategy, and really, don't give up. We're going to get through this. And eventually the economy will come back. The virus will go away. And going forward, we will be more prepared. Just like after 9/11, our world changed, and we've done pretty well in protecting ourselves in that way. And I think here we'll do a better job protecting ourselves from these situations. The world, in my opinion, will never be the same. We will have a new world, which will become the new normal. So we're all going to have to be nimble, adjust our businesses. And I've said this to Michael before. What I am telling people is the time to evolve is now. Not wait to see what it looks like. Start your evolution today. That's
beautiful.
My word.
That is incredible advice. Dan, I want to again thank you so much for joining us. And for the attendees, please, guys, reach out to Dan Geltrude. He is superb in what he does. I imagine that some of your questions may have been answered today. Still, many more of you would have more questions. Dan Geltrude has absolutely been source for me in a lot of the things that we're doing. And again, I want to thank all the attendees and the people who are joining in Facebook Live. Thank you, and thank you again, Dan Geltrude. Michael Smikin here from Callagy Law, your relentless guardian. Thank you, folks.
Thank you, Michael.
You're very welcome.